Yo, what's up guys? Unfortunately Lithium is not here to do your usual deck profile, but I'm far featured here on Joshua Schmidt's deck profile, and congratulations!
Thank you.
First place!
Yeah.
What'd you play and why'd you play it?
This is so surreal, man. I just played this deck. I played the Bestial Runick because I like it. That is literally the reason. I think, like, honestly,
Smile.
preparing for this event, I think it was very tough for me. I wasn't super motivated for this particular one simply because there's so many different decks in the format, and it felt like whenever I was playing, there was going to be good matchups and bad matchups. Like even the quote-unquote tier 1 decks have like their good matchups and their bad matchups. Like Labyrinth is a really good deck, but it's really bad against Unchained. Rescue Ace is really good against a lot of stuff, but it's really bad against Lab, and so on and so forth. So it's just this giant rock, paper, scissors format, which I wasn't the biggest fan of. On Friday, I decided to play this literally on Friday, by the way. I brought different decks with me. I was this close to queuing Vanquish Soul into this tournament, which would have been crazy.
Queuing. Master do brains.
And I decided on Friday that I really like this deck, and I want to give a huge shout out first and foremost to Tinkabui, who is a fellow Runick enjoyer, did not play Runick at this event and therefore got punished by losing to me in top 4. No, on a real note though, I was talking to him about this deck on Friday, and I came with a different list to the event, and he told me about specifically Duality, and that card's been insane all weekend. I guess it was a very weird timeline for him that he had to play against me in top 4 because he was playing Lab, and this deck, it destroys Lab. So that was unfortunate for him, but appreciate you, thank you. I'll just show you the deck and then, yeah. It's 3 Quem. The reason why Quem is so good in this deck is on summon You Foolish Cartesia, which I only play one of. The standard list plays 3 Cartesia, but I only play one. You Foolish Cartesia on summon, or the Bestial Allure. And then when a card leaves the extra deck, you get to summon a monster that mentions Fallen of Albaz back from the graveyard. So what you do is you summon Quem, you send one of these two, you summon Hugin, and then you go chaining 1 Hugin, chaining 2 Quem to chain block your Hugin from Ash. So you get the Fountain, unless they have Imperm or Veiler, and then you bring back the Cartesia, and then you have 2 level 4 tuners and a level 2 non-tuner, so you go into Triad, draw a card, make a level 10 synchro, so on and so forth. Runick plays can extend it further, but that's the basic idea, right? And then in the end phase, you're going to get this back from the graveyard because the fusion monster is at the graveyard. The reason why it's only 1 Cartesia is because drawing this is so much worse than drawing this. Quem does all the work in this deck. I have other ways. The duality that Dinka told me about was another way to get more tuners into the deck, and I really didn't want to draw the Cartesia all that often, right? You already have a secondary target for the Quem by playing the Bestial Allure, which is like if you draw both, you can just send this, and because it counts as Fallen of Albaz in the graveyard, you can just special summon the Cartesia from hand, so that's fine. The one Bestial Allure is of course so that you can search, if you don't draw a tuner, the Lubellion can worst case function as a tuner because this is a Bestial, so you can search it with Lubellion, you can reborn it with Quem. The effect literally doesn't matter other than the fact sometimes it matters that it's called Albaz in the graveyard. You don't need to draw a Bestial in this deck, but they really make your plays just from like getting 1 level 10 synchro to like getting multiples and having this pattern and all that kind of stuff. And the real reason to play this package is because of Regained. Regained makes this deck basically outlast every other deck in the format because you get to recycle, most importantly, your extra deck monsters, because the extra deck is relatively tight, but as soon as you have a Regained, you just keep using like Bestials on your own Runick fusions and put them back into the extra deck, draw more cards, and never run out, which is insane. The second Serenir was just card number 40. I had the entire deck built. It was 39 cards I wanted to play. I decided to just go 1 more Serenir because I think this deck, it's not going to have a lot of non-engine. I don't think it's the perfect deck for the format. It was good for me. I liked it a lot. This deck has weaknesses, and one of its weaknesses is that it doesn't have room for a lot of non-engine. The only non-engine you have is basically the Bestials, and I play Ash.
Why 2 Regained and not like 1 Trap?
The trap is just bad to draw going second, and Regained is the by far more important one. By playing 2, you make it so that if you draw it, you have the option of discarding it for Hugin without it being gone for the rest of the game. Also, the revive effect is not once per turn. Like, it's once per copy, basically. So if you establish 2, you can revive 2 Bestials every turn.
Okay, Loki did not know that. That's kind of crazy.
The draw effect is once per turn, but the revive one is not. So that is nice. You know, sometimes, you know, you draw one and then you just get the other, and that's like really good in grind games. And then Ash, like I said, this is the only non-engine in my deck other than Bestials. So what this means is this deck actually has, I think, sufficient non-engine against all the matchups where the Bestials are good, like Lab, Unchained, and Tier. I didn't lose to a single one of those. I beat all of those. If you're playing against a deck like Infernoble or Rescue Ace or whatever, all of the decks that have very strong turn 1 combos that don't care about Bestials, if you go second with this deck, it's going to be tough. Like in the finals game 1, my hand was good, but like I don't beat full Rescue Ace combo with this deck going second most of the time. I outgrinded some Rescue Aces in Swiss, but if the Rescue Ace opponent is good, like Anthony in the finals, I don't think you beat it with this deck going second. The reason why I was okay with that is because worst case, that makes the matchup close to a 50-50. Because if I go first, it's still completely fine. Like, I still set up like a really, really good board with even just average hands. I can set it up through hand traps. It's really good if you go first into any matchup. I probably also lose to pack on stream if I don't win the dice roll. Like that's just the thing that I accepted with this deck is that, you know, you're gonna have bad matchups like that. The reason I chose Ash as the only hand trap is because in theory it does give you the chance to just end a Rescue Ace player's turn if you draw that. It's also the best one against Lab, which makes the matchup was really, really good. And it did work once where I made a Rescue Ace player pass turn to 1 Ash Blossom. Runick Engine, 3 tip, 3 flashing, 3 freezing, 3 destruction, 3 slumber, 1 smiting, 1 dispelling. Beautiful, 17. Could not be happier.
Deck anyone out?
And the 2 yeah. Mikanko with the untargetable friggin' green thingy, just decked him out. I was really happy to be able to play 17, and the thing is, I was considering like, hey, theoretically you could play some more non-engine over these 3. But I honestly felt like it was better to lean into the advantages of the deck rather than trying to fix a weakness that you're not gonna fix. Like if I put Talents here instead, for example, I'm not gonna beat Rescue Ace going second with the Talents. I'm not gonna beat Vanadium or Infernoble going second because I have Talents in my deck. That's not gonna happen. So instead I decided to make the deck as consistent as possible, win the matchups it's supposed to win. Literally, the only time I didn't draw a Runick was I think against yugioh in top 8, like where it opened like 5 Bestial cards. But other than that, the deck's just really, really consistent. And then my favorite card in the deck probably, once again, shout outs to Dinka Bui for telling me about that, which is Triple Duality. So the reason why I like Duality so much in this deck, obviously the main target for it is this thing, the Alvain. So the effect of this card is that it's a tuner, by the way.
Shout outs to SP.
Duality does a lot of things for this deck. First of all, it's tuner access, because this thing is a tuner. It frees up your extra monster zone. It helps you dodge Veiler and Imperm on Hugin, which were very, very popular cards. Recycles Light and Darks from the graveyard, which is huge, because the extra deck is so tight that recycling like a Gary and a Hugin is super, super clutch. Recycling Tri-Edge Master, recycling whatever. And because it has a graveyard effect, if I draw it together with a Quem, like if I already have tuners, and I don't need to dodge Imperm or Veiler, I can just discard this for Hugin, and it's just a +1, because in the graveyard you banish it and draw a card from it later. So the overall concept of this card in this deck I think was just really, really good, and I'm glad that Dinka told me about it on Friday. There was some awkward hands with it on stream, where like if you draw only Bestials, which that's not supposed to happen. There's 17 Runicks in this deck, like you're supposed to have a Runick, but I guess if you don't, the card's not good. It was very, very good for me all weekend. I've dodged a bunch of Imperms, I've dodged a bunch of Veilers. The recycling has been clutch over and over and over again. I just love how grindy this deck is, man. There's so many feel-good cards in this deck. It's actually surreal. I'm so happy to have won with it. I literally just played this because I like it so much. I've always wanted to play like cards like Regained, Duality. It's such a fun deck. Extra deck is double Hugin, 1 Gary, which is the bare minimum, but you get to recycle it with Regained and Duality, so it's actually fine. Sleipnir is really nice because it has synergy with Regained. You can like banish your opponent's Light or Darks and they won't come back. The same is true for SP, by the way. Also, you can trigger stuff like Chengying, and just making it so that every single Runick is now a potential interruption or a way to bait your opponent's cards is really, really nice. Like even if I draw a freaking Smiting Storm going second, I can just summon it to bait opponents like Barons and all that kind of stuff. So that's really, really nice. The 1 Alvain, which is the main Duality target, you have this pattern, which is obviously crazy. Like in the standard combo that I showed you earlier, if you go Quem and then Hugin and then revive the Cartesia, if you have a Bestial there, you can just make the level 6 Synchro and then banish one of the tuners for the Bestial, make this pattern with the level 4 tuner that you have left on the board, make it this pattern, bring back the other tuner, so now 1 Bestial basically turns the board into this pattern plus Baron instead of just Baron. And then very often you would do lines where if you open Lubellion, you would tribute this pattern for Lubellion, get Regained, and then on the opponent's turn they summon, you bring back this pattern, and the grind game is beautiful. Chaos Angel, phenomenal card. The more removal options you have in this deck, the better, especially because you can make this without a tuner, so like stuff like Hugin plus Lubellion, that kind of things. I suppose Denko Sekka plus Serenir. It's just phenomenal for this deck because it gives you so much more flexibility and removal. The Baron is your go-to, of course. Chengying is just a phenomenal card. I was honestly hesitant about running all 4 level 10s, but Chengying's been amazing. Like the card is just phenomenal, especially against decks like Unchained. I played against 2 Mikankos throughout top 64. Being able to banish the Huli, the green one that you can't target, was really, really clutch. 1 Scarlight, which is here mainly because it's a duality target that lets you dodge negation on Lubellion, but it also obviously has the implications of, you know, it's a Runick deck, doesn't have a battle phase, so burn damage is nice. You need this kind of thing in a Runick deck. And then the Coral and the Tri-Edge, they both draw you a card. One is a tuner, one is not. If you have more tuners on the board, you go for this. If you have access to more Runicks, you go for this. Turn them into a level 10 Synchro. Fabled Unicorn, it's been niche. I haven't summoned it very often. The way you do it is, of course, you duality away your Giri. It's happened only like 2 or 3 times throughout the event, but whenever this thing hit the board, it wins the game. It always hits them out of nowhere because this card is just stupid. Like, whenever a card resolves while both players have the same amount of cards in hand, it just negates and destroys it. It doesn't activate. So, like, if you both have the same amount of cards in hand and you have a set duality and a Giri, and your opponent activates a card and you just chain duality, tribute Giri, summon Unicorn in resolution, it's still going to negate and destroy the card. And when when your opponent keeps playing cards, you just chain Runicks to it, because whenever they play a card from their hand, you chain a Runick, that puts you to the same number of cards in hand again. So this card literally, when it hits the board in the right situation, they literally cannot play the game. There's one SP which is huge for this deck. Basically, not being completely tied to always having to have tuner plus non-tuner is very important. Freeing your extra monster zone, the grind game from it is obviously great. The synergy with regain is completely busted. If you're playing against a deck that plays lights or darks, you just keep banishing it and their darks and put back their darks with regain, draw a card, and their shit doesn't come back, but SP does. It's wonderful. And then the one Typhon, it's great for any deck that gets 3 bodies onto the board. Like going second, summoning a Hugin, immediately threatening this is very, very good. I've summoned it a bunch of times. Just a phenomenal option in this deck. The one thing that I'm not playing that I decided to cut is the Grand Guignol package for Cartesia, right? The version that plays 3 Cartesia might want to play the Grand Guignol Diffuse. Of course, I couldn't do that because I had to play the targets for duality. I suppose if you don't play duality, you can do that. I consider everything here mandatory. And 2 slots isn't even enough for the Grand Guignol package, because it would be like Grand Guignol, Lulu Lilith. But honestly, I think you also need Garura if you play Grand Guignol, because very, very often you just want to draw cards in this deck to find the Runicks that you're missing. So I don't think I like the Grand Guignol package at all. I didn't miss it a single time. It was actually cool because the Cartesia made my opponents play weird because they thought I could chain it to make a fusion, but I just couldn't. They didn't know that, right? Because the standard, if you can call it standard version of this deck, plays Grand Guignol. They were like careful. Like I would summon this and then Hugin, and they wouldn't imperm it, for example, because they thought I could just dodge it, right? I guess that's a huge implication that worked out for this tournament. As soon as people know that this deck doesn't play it, or like if people don't play it moving forward, I guess that might change, but yeah. That's the extra deck. Like I said, it's very tight. Honestly, would want more of some of these cards, but you just have to manage them with duality and regain, and you're going to be fine. The side deck is weird for this deck because you don't have a lot of non-engine in your main deck, and you also don't have a lot of stuff you can side out. Going second, you can take out Lubellions. I take out 1 regained almost always. The second Serenir goes in every matchup where Bystials aren't great. Sometimes you side out some of the Runicks, but it's 3 Nib and 3 Droll paired with 3 Phantasme. The reason I did it this way is because, first of all, I love Phantasme. That card is such a feel-good card for me, which is kind of like the motto of the deck. The real reason I went for this combination is because I didn't think cards like Imperm or Veiler on their own were strong enough. I felt like I needed the most impactful ones, and those are Nib and Droll against the respective matchups. And so the only thing I could think of to pair up with those is like Phantasme, because Phantasme gives you a higher chance to draw these ones. I don't want this to be an Imperm or a Veiler or a Crow or whatever that's not going to do enough anyways. I want to have a chance at drawing these. Phantasme has been great all weekend, especially against decks like Unchained and stuff like that. You can just win grind games without drawing a single hand trap, like it's completely fine. Phantasme has been phenomenal. I've won every single game going second where I've drawn Phantasme. Not a single one I lost. There's 3 Denko Sekkas. The original reason I put in Denko Sekka was because I was looking at my deck, and obviously, like I said earlier, the Rescue Ace matchup is tough. And so this card is actually in here for Rescue Ace. Because depending on what end board they make, if they go for like a nib-proof line to make SP on their turn, if they don't end on Preventer, which is not a given, they don't always end on Preventer. I wanted one card, one singular card that I can beat the Rescue Ace matchup with, right? I already have Ash in the main deck, which had a solid chance of making them pass. This was Veiler for a while, because I thought like maybe I can Veiler them, but there's so many hands for Rescue Ace that play through Veiler. And so the idea is basically, you side out some of your normal summons going second against Rescue Ace. Ideally, you use Phantasme to put a big body on the board and fix your hand a little bit, to have a higher chance of opening Denko plus Duality, because that's how you still get a tuner if you have Duality plus Denko. But even if you don't, like you just like put up a Denko. Denko is bigger than SP by 100, so you can go battle phase, attack over the SP. The SP's gone, all their back row is locked. You can theoretically just grind with Runicks from there. Or like Lubellion and Hugin can make a Chaos Angel, which can make the Denko unable to be run over and stuff like that. So that was the main reason for the card. And then I guess it also covers Labyrinth. Ironically, I think it's better going first against Lab than going second, because it stops all the furniture from activating. So if they play the heavy combo version, like you can't use Arias, you can't use furniture, Kuklok's gonna be dead, like all that stuff, and it's bigger than Ariana, so it's really hard for them to out the Denko. So you just go first, normal summon Denko, because no one shotguns furniture in your draw phase. Like they're just gonna wait for you to do something. You just normal summon Denko and then play your Runick stuff, and you don't even need a tuner in that case. Like you just go Denko, Runick, control them, and they cannot play the game basically. So this card also is very good against Lab. Not that this deck needs it. Like honestly, this deck can cite nothing against Lab and just be fine. And then the last card is Dogwood, which I thought was gonna be necessary. I guess I was scared after Dortmund because I had so many draws in freaking Dortmund and Pearly. I was scarred for life. This card came up in round 1, it came up in round 2, and then it never came up throughout the entire rest of the event.
Isn't Lava Golem or Sphere Mode kind of sick in this deck?
You could, but it's just like against certain decks, not having a normal summon does hurt. The Denko is kind of an exception because against the decks that you side Denko against, you can just grind with Runicks. I considered it, but I don't think it does it. I think you just have to draw that one impactful hand trap. I think that was the best plan. And I think I did get fortunate with that. Like, I mean, mean, I had Droll in a couple of very important moments. I had Nib in a couple of very important moments. And like I said, Phantasme has been carrying me all weekend. Like, Phantasme has been completely absurd, drawing me into Nibs and stuff like that. So while I do think the deck is very good, and I think I played the deck very, very well, which was the reason for a lot of my wins, which is also why I chose the deck. I think it grinds very well. I think I'm good at this deck, right? And I think that makes the difference rather than the deck just being an insane meta call or anything like that. I don't think the deck is that. I enjoyed it a lot. I'm very happy it worked out. It has its really good matchups. It has its weak matchups. And I think I got fortunate when I did meet the bad matchup. When I got a feature match against Pack on Inferno, I was lucky enough to win the dice roll there. Lose the dice roll against Rescue Ace, but nib them in game 3, like in the finals, you know. But I went into this tournament accepting that. I was just like, you know, none of the decks have no issues, right? And I'm just gonna pick what I like, and I could not be happier that it worked out. I hope you enjoyed the coverage. I hope you enjoyed the deck profile. I hope you tried the deck. It's very, very fun. It's got a very good matchup against Tier, Lab, and Unchained. So if you play against a lot of those, I think I 2-0'd almost all of those throughout the event. Thank you everyone who supported me on my journey here. The support online has been absolutely crazy. I appreciate every single one of you. And I mean, yeah, that's the deck profile. And signing out.
Subscribe.